Welcome to this episode of Location Filmmaking. This time we're going to talk a little bit about Editing Basics 101. We'll be talking about the editing language, the processes, technologies, and solution, and just to give you advice on what is the simple workflow that you really need to do. So what do editors really do?
What makes a movie is the editing.
I've been in the business for, 37 years, I think, something like that. And I did not really realize what editing was until I was in the editing room myself.
There's magic to editing. Magic is a discovery of something new that wasn't intended, that works for the movie.
Once you start to realize that film is the sum of editing, then editing is the thing you're always looking at.
Showtime, folks.
I think great editing skill will protect a director from suicide.
So that's an introduction on what editors really do in a film team, so to speak. But do you know how editing really got started? Because the language of editing did not really evolve just like yesterday. It took many, many years before it really got started.
The first filmmakers simply photographed what interested or amused them. They held a shot until they got bored, or the film ran out.
The fathers of cinema, Edison in the United States and the Lumiere brothers in France, were very pessimistic about the future of cinema. There was probably a worldwide interest in seeing these images move, but once you'd seen somebody playing a joke with a hose, why pay money to see something that you can see for real out in the street? In fact, Auguste Lumiere went as far as to say that cinema was an invention without a future.
But Edwin Porter, one of Thomas Edison's employees, proved him wrong. Porter discovered that cutting separate shots together could create a story.
Edwin S. Porter really was the one with the Life of the American Fireman, I think, that started intercutting and creating an emotional impact in the audience by intercutting two shots that are not related to each other. One scene is going on at one place, basically the firemen rushing to a fire with their horse-drawn wagons, and the other scene is the fire, miles away. And you intercut the two, and you understand psychologically and emotionally that these people's lives are in danger, and these people are coming to rescue them, and you're rooting all of a sudden for that to happen, and you're hoping they save the people.
So, basically, editing started in a way whereby they actually cut certain scenes down so that they can actually deliver a message clearly. So let's talk basic about what some of these languages derived from the past. Okay, let's talk about some editing languages. First up, let's talk about this particular area of expertise that all of you should later get in your course. It's called transitions. So a transition is basically a technique that you bridge a gap between one shot to another shot. Okay, so the first standard one is called a cut. Okay, a cut is a simpler shot. On your editing timeline, you actually place one shot next to another shot because it changes instantaneously from one place to another place. So it's like this. As you can see, there's a shot of a hill, then there's another shot of a police guy coming out from the car, then a shot of the girl, that is there, and so on and so forth. So you can see that some of these shots, when they are placed together, they form a scene. But the shot from one shot to another shot is just a cut. Okay, it just cuts from one shot to another shot. There is no special effect. It's just side by side on the timeline. The next language you need to know is called dissolve. So dissolve is actually a gradual change from one shot to the next shot. Okay, and a lot of TV shows will do this so that people will have the sense that time has passed. So how does it look is that you have one clear shot that the scene is going to end, and then you dissolve to another shot. So in between the two shots, you will have a blend between the previous image and the image that's coming up. Right, so that's called a dissolve. The next transition language that you need to understand is called wipe. So a wipe is actually a line that's progressing from one end of the frame to the other end. So by the time it wipes off, the new shot has already overtaken the old shot. So almost like a window wiper from a car. Okay, so this is how a wipe happens. So you have a scene from one place, perhaps this is an office, and then the wipe starts from left to right, and by the time this line goes to the other side, it will be a new scene. All right, it all depends on whether you want left to right, up and down. It's entirely up to you. The next transition is called a fade. So a fade is actually a gradual change of a solid screen color, whether it's white or it's black, and then it will fade to a new shot. So you can start your clip with a black frame, and then slowly, gradually, a new shot appears. I mean, it could be a field, it could be a building, it could be somewhere else. Or you can end your shot with a shot of the house, and then it fades to black. All right, so normally a fade is to softly introduce the audience where the story is, and at the end of the film is softly to introduce the audience that the film is about to finish. So it looks something like this. You have a solid shot, and then slowly, gradually, it fades to black. So let's look at some editing processes that is very important for you to understand. First up is acquisition and organization. Okay, to acquire and organize. When you finish shooting your film, you have your film on an SD card or hard drive, depending on what the camera is. So all your film clips that you've shot will be in file sizes. And each and every one of these file sizes will have a number. So you can rename the number based on your shot or take. And you can file them into folders. Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, etc., etc. Right? So the trouble is data wrangling, whereby you have to take out all the data out from the disk and then transfer them into your hard drive or your computer for editing. So this is quite time consuming, but it's a necessity. The next stage after that is to review and select. Now this is where the whole team sits down and see all your shots. These are called dailies. The best way I can advise you is to see your dailies every day. Even though your project has not finished, do not wait until your project finishes, then you watch your dailies. See it every day so that you can quickly itemize the good shots from the bad shots. And then you can select the best based on your scene. And once you've selected your best, you can start to assemble on your timeline, your editing timeline. Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3. Do it on your sequences. And then by the time everything is finished, it will form what we call a rough cut. Okay, so when you have the rough cut, then you slowly will refine the cut until it becomes a fine cut or final cut, and then you picture lock, because this is a part whereby you work and rework your film until it is at its absolute best. Sound is perfect, cuts are perfect, the pacing is perfect. Once that's done, you lock all your channels, your video channels, your audio channels, make sure no one touch them. Okay, and then it's ready to digitize out and submit. Now, in the current world, there are a lot of digital editing technologies, but I'm just going to tell you two very basic stuff. Okay, first one is called linear editing system. In the olden days, cameras were shot on tape. Some cameras right now are still shot on tape, but they're getting very rare. So once you shoot your film on tape, you have to take the tape out and you have to place them inside a recorder whereby the recorder can actually read the information from the tape. So this particular system is called linear editing system, whereby you can only edit by the tape. From one tape to another tape, you can only do your editing by the tape. So you have a controller that can control between tape deck A, tape deck B, tape deck C, tape deck D, and then it transfers to one master tape. It's very labor intensive. You have to really plan in advance, and it relies a lot on hardware. So if one hardware goes down or spoil, you really can't do anything much. So thankfully we don't really do that now in school, because now we are doing non-linear editing. Okay, it's 100% computer based editing. It is software driven, and in the early years the system was still very expensive. It was still large. Your normal laptop could not fulfill this, but as technology progresses, now you can actually edit on your desktop and your laptop too. So it's one of the better ways to learn editing, because it's non-destructive. If you erase something on your timeline, your Adobe Premiere Pro, not to worry, because your original file is still there. Okay, so it will not destroy your original file. It is a method that caters to everyone and any kind of working style they want. Some people want to work at night, some people want to work in the library. Not an issue. Bring your laptop there. You can definitely do your editing, and you definitely have a lot of chances to play with the system, to do special effects, to insert pictures, to be very creative as much as you can, because it's very flexible. The software, especially Adobe Premiere Pro, can integrate with Illustrator, After Effects. It's cheap or cheaper compared to the higher end professional systems in the film studio, and it's a good way to integrate the digital buffet. Basically, it's quite well prepared. Now, the processes of how you can actually get your job done, there are two currently right now in the world, but one of them is slowly phasing out. So let me get down to it first. There are two types of editing processes. One is called offline editing, and the other one is called online editing. Offline editing is basically still stuck in the past, whereby most of it is all done by tape, and you can produce your final product, okay, for a real high resolution editing system. But here is the problem. The goal of the offline system is actually to create an EDL. The EDL means edit decision list. Okay, later I'll show you what it is. Basically, it is like a diary of all the clips and storage techniques that you've done on the editing system, and then when everything is finished, you can actually have the file for the EDL, and then you can actually extract it to make it to do for your final film. For offline, it's cheaper because the equipment that you are using is quite relatively low res equipment. Technically, even your laptop can even do it. You can actually edit a very low res version of the film that you're working in, and your original footage is in 4K. So you don't edit the 4K footage. You edit a lower res generated footage. You don't care about the 4K footage. So once everything is finished, you have your EDL, Then you go to a high resolution machine, you feed the EDL inside, let it get generated, and the EDL will pull what you have edited on your own timeline from the 4K. Okay, so that's how it's done. It's like a blueprint. So when you're editing on your laptop, you're editing a low res. Then when you have done everything, then you can convert it into 4K. So you can spend your time making changes and be creative as what you want. No issue because it's low resolution. Okay, and this is an EDL. It's basically a blueprint step by step of all your video edits until your final cut, and it looks something like this. So it has like encodes and numbers, source in, source out, what you cut, until your final edit, and it will just pull everything together and convert it to 4K. It's very hard to explain this to you, but by the time you reach third year, you will most probably understand it. Okay. So offline editing, quite a few good advantages. It's actually a rough cut system. Because you don't work with the original raw high resolution footage. You take your footage that you have, you convert it into low res, and then you cut from there. And inexpensive because you can actually cut from a desktop, you can cut from your laptop. You can be as creative as you want because you can change as many times as you want, and it's quite low cost. But the problem is that if you are time sensitive and you need to get the thing out in time, this may not be the perfect solution for you because some people prefer it to do online editing. They prefer to do it directly onto 4K, so they don't have to waste time doing EDL and converting the stuff into 4K. They just straightway go from the original material and just straightway go into the master final cut. But the problem is that since it's online and everything is connected to your 4K resolution stuff, you need a video server and processor fast enough to actually do the editing for you, because your original footage is very big. So it's linked to a server. Unless you have a computer that's compatible to the server, then you can edit. Now this is done in a lot of Hollywood studios because they have editors from different countries that can actually edit the same film or different parts of the film. For example, you may have a film, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and you can have editors from Hollywood editing the main part, but the animation part could be edited by someone else in Australia or Korea or something else, and then they have the footage and they can dump it into a server. This is what I mean by online editing. It saves time because you're editing straight to actual source, but you need a lot of power. You need high-speed internet to actually edit this for you. You need a large processor to actually run the stuff for you. You need a lot of disk space. So online editing is always Final Cut using original source material, high-end. Non-creative process. This is a big debate here. You can be creative when you're doing online, but because it's a lot of money and time is sensitive, chances are you don't have much time to do so many cuts. Your cuts are all streamlined to what the studio may want or what your client may want. So your creative processes are kept at a lower importance. Whether it's offline editing or online editing, all of them will have what we call a time code. That's the signal for the whole sequence that you're editing, and it's measured in hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So you can see these numbers will be running every time when you press a record button on your camera, and even when edit, there's also a timeline. Be very careful. The moment the timeline is not moving, something is wrong with your clip. And when something is wrong with your clip, you cannot use that clip for your final cut because your software will not acknowledge that clip existence. Always remember that in this country, we are using PAL. So all your project submission must be 25 frames per second. Okay, you must set it at 25 frames per second. However, if you're in the United States or European countries, their frame rate is a little bit faster. It's actually at 29.97 frames per second, rounded off to about 30. So I just want all of you to understand this too. You also will have a problem if that you check out your camera and you put it at 25 frames, and then later on, another day you shoot it at 30 frames, and then another day you shoot at 25 frames. When you start to edit that, you will have some difficult issues in your sequencing. So I want all of you to be very, very cautious about that. And of course, the EDL, as what we mentioned just now, it helps the EDL to actually give the master list. Now, there are a few editing solutions out there, but I'm going to show you the software solutions first. What we use here in our school is Adobe Premiere Pro. It's actually a software for editing. It's pretty user-friendly. It's really, really great. And of course, besides Adobe Premiere Pro, you have Final Cut Pro. You also have Avid Media Composer. So all these softwares all do the same thing. It's just like a car. You have a Ferrari, a Mercedes, a Lamborghini. They are just different brands, but they still do the same thing. Get you from point A to point B. Okay. Hardware solutions. For you, in location filmmaking, you do not need anything larger than an iMac. Okay, iMac is your maximum. That is fine. But when you are editing at home, you can have a desktop, you can extend it to a TV monitor, you can have a laptop, but most importantly, you need a drive. Okay, a drive that is fast enough for you to do the things that you want to do without it crashing. So my recommendation for everyone is to get a G drive with Thunderbolt, because only this particular makeup would be able to give you the sort of speed that you need to actually do your projects without you crashing and crying all the time. Okay, so that is the end of editing, and the rest of the editing skills we will pick up when we are doing editing classes. So that's to be continued. I want everyone to read the digital movie making textbook, the 7th edition, chapter 10 on editing. And that is the end of the editing lecture.